The ice covering my driveway looked like a skating rink, and at 68 years old with 2 replacement knees and a bad hip, I wasn't about to test my balance on it. I stood at my front door, staring at the frozen sheet that stretched from my garage all the way to the street. This wasn't just a little frost. A water main had broken 3 days ago right at the property line between my house and the common area, flooding everything before the temperature dropped to 15 degrees. Now, I was essentially trapped in my own home in Thornfield, Minnesota, a suburb just outside Minneapolis where winter didn't mess around. My name is Kevin Thompson, and I had moved into this planned community 2 years ago after retiring from 30 years as a heavy equipment operator. The idea was simple: downsize from the big family home, find a place with less maintenance, enjoy my golden years. The Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association had seemed like a minor inconvenience at worst when I signed the papers. I paid my dues on time, kept my lawn neat, and stayed out of everyone's way. That morning, I called the HOA office for the 3rd time since the pipe burst. A woman answered on the 5th ring. Meadowbrook Estates, HOA, this is Patricia speaking. Hi Patricia, this is Kevin Thompson at 4782 Wintergreen Drive. I'm calling again about the ice situation on my property. The water main break has left my entire driveway and walkway completely iced over, and I really need this addressed. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow, and I can't safely get to my car. There was a pause, then some keyboard clicking. Yes, Mr. Thompson, I see your previous messages. As we've stated before, the water main is city property, so you'll need to contact them about the initial break. The HOA is only responsible for snow and ice removal on common areas and main roads through the development. But the water flooded from the common area onto my property, I said, trying to keep my voice level. And I'm disabled. I've got metal in both knees and my hip. One fall on this ice could put me in the hospital. I understand your concern, Mr. Thompson, but our contract with the snow removal company only covers specific areas. Your driveway is your responsibility. I can't physically do it myself, and the salt I've put down isn't making a dent because the ice is too thick. I'm asking the HOA to help as a reasonable accommodation. I'll pass your message along to the board, Patricia said in a tone that suggested she wouldn't. Is there anything else I can help you with today? I hung up, frustration building in my chest. This was ridiculous. I paid over $3,000 a year in HOA fees, and they couldn't help me with a legitimate safety issue. The next day, I missed my doctor's appointment. I tried to navigate the driveway using a walker, but nearly went down hard after just 2 steps. My neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, saw me struggling and called out from her doorway, but couldn't help since she was dealing with her own mobility issues. I retreated back inside, angry and feeling trapped. That afternoon, I decided to attend the HOA board meeting. They were held twice a month in the community center, a fancy building with a gym, pool, and meeting rooms that justified part of those hefty fees we all paid. I carefully made my way to my truck, using the path through my lawn, which was at least somewhat navigable, and drove the half-mile to the center. Inside the main meeting room, about 15 other homeowners sat in folding chairs facing a long table where 5 board members sat. I recognized the president immediately, Donna Sterling. She was 52, according to the bio on the HOA website, with severely styled blonde hair and the kind of rigid posture that suggested she'd never relaxed a day in her life. She wore a blue blazer that looked expensive and had reading glasses on a chain around her neck. "We'll now open the floor to homeowner concerns," Donna said, looking at a tablet in front of her. "Please keep comments to 3 minutes or less." I raised my hand, and she nodded at me with a tight smile. Kevin Thompson, 4782 Wintergreen Drive, I said, standing up with some effort. I've called the office 3 times about a dangerous ice situation on my property. The water main break last week flooded my driveway, and it's now covered in several inches of solid ice. As someone with documented disabilities affecting my mobility, I'm asking the board to approve emergency ice removal as a reasonable accommodation. Donna's smile didn't waver. Mr. Thompson, we're aware of your calls. The board has discussed this, and our position is that individual driveways are the homeowner's responsibility. We sympathize with your situation, but we can't set a precedent of providing individual property maintenance. This isn't regular maintenance, I said, feeling my face get hot. This is an emergency safety situation caused by infrastructure failure in the common area. The water that froze on my property came from HOA managed land. Another board member, a thin man in his 40s named Gerald, leaned forward. The water main itself is city property. Have you filed a claim with them? Yes, 3 days ago. They said it'll be weeks before they process it, and that I should contact my homeowner's insurance or the HOA for immediate safety issues. Your insurance, then, Donna said. The HOA can't be responsible for every individual issue that arises. If we did your driveway, we'd have to do everyone's. No one else has this problem, I said, my voice rising. My driveway is the only one affected because of where the break occurred. A woman in the front row spoke up. I think we should help him. It's a safety issue. Donna shot her a look. Mrs. Patterson, we're not taking comments from the floor while another resident has the floor. Mr. Thompson, the board's decision stands. You have options available through the city or your insurance. Next concern. I stood there for a moment, shocked at being dismissed so quickly. You're telling me that I'm trapped in my home and the HOA won't do anything. We're telling you that we have policies in place for a reason, Donna said, her voice hardening. Individual property maintenance is not our responsibility. Please sit down so we can address other concerns. I sat, but I barely heard the rest of the meeting. My mind was racing. When it ended, I approached Donna directly. Mrs. Sterling, can we talk about this reasonably? I'm not asking for much, just some help with an emergency situation. She gathered her papers without looking at me. Mr. Thompson, I've said what I needed to say. The board votes on these matters, and the decision is 4-1 against providing assistance. You're welcome to hire a private contractor and submit a reimbursement request, but I can tell you now that it will likely be denied. This is discrimination, I said, against someone with disabilities. Now she looked at me, and her expression was ice cold. That's a very serious accusation. I'd be careful about making legal threats you can't back up. The HOA has an attorney on retainer, and we take slander very seriously. She walked past me, leaving me standing there with the other board members packing up. The man who'd voted in favor of helping me, a younger guy named Marcus, approached. Sorry, man, he said quietly. I tried. Donna runs this board like her personal kingdom. She doesn't like setting precedents that might cost money or make her look soft. What am I supposed to do? I asked. He shrugged. Honestly, most people either give up or move. She's been president for 6 years and she's not going anywhere. Her supporters on the board do whatever she says. I drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel tight. Back at my house, I sat in my truck in the garage, staring at the ice through the windshield. The overhead light caught it just right, making it sparkle like diamonds, beautiful and deadly. That night I called my daughter, Rachel, who lived in Chicago. Dad, that's insane, she said after I explained the situation. Can't you sue them or something? Maybe, but that takes time and money. Meanwhile, I'm stuck here. I had to cancel my physical therapy appointment today, too. If I miss too many, they'll drop me from the program. Do you want me to come up there? I could try to help clear it. Honey, there's at least 3 inches of solid ice across a 50-foot driveway. It would take days with an ice pick and you have work. I appreciate it, but I need to figure this out myself. After we hung up, I paced my living room thinking. I'd spent my whole career operating heavy machinery. Dump trucks, backhoes, excavators, you name it. I still had my commercial driver's license, kept it updated just in case. And I knew people in the industry. Guys who owed me favors from years of working together. An idea started forming. It was crazy, probably stupid, but the more I thought about it, the more appealing it became. The next morning, I called my old friend Tommy Chen. No relation to my neighbor, but he owned a small excavation and hauling company in Minneapolis. Kevin, how's retirement treating you? Honestly, Tommy, not great right now. I explained the situation. That's rough, man. These HOAs can be real pieces of work. What do you need? This might sound weird, but do you have any equipment you could let me borrow for a day? Maybe a dump truck, Tommy laughed. You bored enough to get back behind the wheel? I've got an old Mac that's sitting idle. Owner wants it moved to a lot across town anyway. You could take it for a day, help me out by relocating it, and it's all yours until you drop it off. Insurance is covered as long as you're licensed. You're a lifesaver, Tommy. Just don't do anything too crazy with it, he said, still chuckling. 2 days later, I picked up the dump truck from Tommy's yard. It was a beast, a 25-ton Mac with a huge dump bed and that distinctive bulldog hood ornament. I'd driven hundreds of these over the years, and settling into the high cab felt like coming home. The engine rumbled to life with a satisfying roar. I drove it back to Meadowbrook Estates, deliberately taking the main entrance. A few residents stopped and stared as I rumbled through the quiet suburban streets. The truck was completely out of place among the neat houses and manicured lawns. But I didn't drive it to my house. Instead, I headed for the north end of the development, where the HOA maintained a large snow storage area. It was basically a huge empty lot where the snow removal contractors dumped all the snow they plowed from the streets and common areas. During heavy winters like this one, it could pile up 20 feet high. Right now, it held massive mountains of snow, and there was only one entrance to the lot, a wide gate off Meadowbrook Drive. The snow removal company used this access point constantly, especially after fresh snowfall. I pulled the dump truck right across the entrance, angled it perfectly so it blocked the entire gate, and shut off the engine. The truck sat there like a beached whale, impossible to move without a serious tow truck or me getting back in to drive it. Then I walked to my truck, which I'd parked nearby, and drove home. The phone started ringing an hour later. I let it go to voicemail. Patricia from the HOA office sounded confused at first. Mr. Thompson, this is Patricia from Meadowbrook Estates HOA. There's a large commercial truck blocking the snow storage area, and someone said they saw you driving it. Could you please call back to discuss this? I deleted it and went about my day. The second call came from Donna Sterling herself. I listened to her voicemail too. Mr. Thompson, this is Donna Sterling. I'm calling about the dump truck blocking HOA property. This is unacceptable and in clear violation of community rules. You need to move it immediately or we'll have it towed at your expense. Call me back within the hour. I smiled and deleted that one too. The third call came from the Thornfield Police Department. That one I answered. Mr. Thompson, this is Officer Bradley Morrison with Thornfield PD. We received a complaint about a commercial vehicle blocking access to an HOA facility. Are you the owner or operator of this vehicle? I'm the operator, officer. It's borrowed from a friend's business. Sir, the HOA is saying it's blocking their snow storage area and preventing their contractors from working. Is there a reason you've parked it there? Officer, I've got a disability situation and a safety hazard at my property that the HOA has refused to address for over a week now. I've made multiple requests for help with a reasonable accommodation under the Fair Housing Act, and they've denied everyone. I parked that truck there to get their attention. There was a pause. Okay, sir. I understand you're frustrated, but you can't block access to property like that. It could be considered criminal mischief or obstruction. Is the snow storage lot on public property or HOA property? I asked. It's HOA property, according to the plat map. Then, I'm in a civil dispute with the HOA, not a criminal matter. I'm not blocking any public roads or emergency access. I'm making a statement about their refusal to provide reasonable accommodation to a disabled resident. Another pause. Sir, I'm going to be straight with you. Technically, you're right that this is probably a civil issue, but the HOA could still get a court order and then you'd be in trouble. Is there any way you and the HOA can work this out? I'm available to negotiate anytime they want to talk about clearing the ice from my property. Officer Morrison sighed. Okay, I'm going to file this as a civil dispute and let the HOA know they need to work it out with you or go through the courts. But Mr. Thompson, don't escalate this further. You don't want criminal charges. Understood, officer. Thank you for being reasonable. After I hung up, I felt a grim satisfaction. The police weren't going to help the HOA, at least not right away. That meant I had some time. An hour later, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Donna Sterling standing on my porch, her face red despite the cold. Behind her stood Gerald, the board member from the meeting. I opened the door, but not the storm door, keeping a barrier between us. Mr. Thompson, we need to talk, Donna said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. I'm listening. You need to move that truck immediately. You're interfering with HOA operations and violating multiple community covenants. I'll move it as soon as the HOA addresses the safety hazard on my property. Your driveway is not our responsibility. Her voice rose sharply. How many times do we have to explain this to you? And how many times do I have to explain that this is a reasonable accommodation request under federal law? I'm disabled. The hazard was created by infrastructure failure on HOA property, and you're refusing to help. Gerald stepped forward. Mr. Thompson, we understand you're upset, but this is not the way to handle it. You're creating a problem for the entire community. We have a snowstorm coming in 2 days, and if our contractors can't access the storage area, the streets won't get plowed properly. Sounds like an emergency, I said. Maybe now you understand how I feel about being trapped in my house. Donna's eyes narrowed. This is extortion. This is negotiation. You want access to your snow storage. Help me with my ice problem. Simple as that. We could sue you for damages, she said. Go ahead. I'll countersue for disability discrimination and failure to provide reasonable accommodation. I've documented every phone call, every email, every request I've made. I've got a lawyer friend who'd love to take this case on contingency. That was a bluff. I didn't have a lawyer lined up, but Donna didn't know that. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. Finally, she spoke, her voice cold and measured. If we arrange for ice removal on your property, you'll move the truck. Immediately. Fine. We'll have a contractor there tomorrow morning. I want it in writing. Email me the work order with a confirmed time. Her jaw clenched. You'll have it within the hour. They left, and I watched them walk back to Gerald's car, Donna gesturing angrily as they talked. True to her word, an email arrived 45 minutes later. It was curt and professional, stating that a contractor would arrive at my property at 8 the next morning to address ice removal, and that I was expected to move the dump truck no later than 9. I slept better that night than I had in a week. The contractor showed up right on time, a crew of 3 guys with an industrial ice melter and removal equipment. They worked for 2 hours, breaking up and hauling away all the ice from my driveway and walkway. When they finished, I could safely walk from my front door to my truck without fear of falling. I called Tommy and drove the dump truck back to his yard, then returned to Meadowbrook Estates in my regular vehicle. Everything seemed resolved, but I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. 3 days after the ice removal, I received a letter from the HOA. It was a formal notice stating that I was being fined $500 per day for the 3 days the dump truck had blocked the snow storage area, totaling $1,500. Additionally, I was being fined $1,000 for operation of commercial vehicles in a residential zone, and another $500 for creating a public nuisance. $3,000 in fines. I called the HOA office immediately. Patricia, I'm looking at this fine notice and this is ridiculous. We had an agreement. Mr. Thompson, the board agreed to help with your ice removal. That doesn't mean there are no consequences for your actions. The fines are legitimate according to the community covenants. I want to speak to the board about this. You're welcome to submit a written appeal, which will be reviewed at the next board meeting in 2 weeks. I hung up and immediately started researching. I pulled out my copy of the community covenants, all 97 pages of dense legal text that I'd barely glanced at when I bought the house. I spent hours going through it, cross-referencing with Minnesota HOA law. The fines, as much as I hated them, were technically within the HOA's power under the covenants. But the amount seemed excessive, and the selective enforcement angle bothered me. I'd seen other residents with work trucks parked in driveways overnight, which should have been violations too if they were being consistent. I started documenting everything. I drove through the neighborhood with my phone, taking pictures of covenant violations that the HOA wasn't addressing. A house 3 streets over had Christmas lights still up in mid-February, violating the decoration timeline rules. Another property had a boat parked in their driveway, which was explicitly prohibited. Someone had painted their house trim a non-approved color. Then I filed a formal appeal and started attending every HOA meeting, not just to fight my fines but to report every single violation I found. If they wanted to play hardball with enforcement, I'd make sure they enforced everything equally. At the next meeting, I arrived early and sat in the front row. Donna's expression when she saw me was priceless. "Mr. Thompson," she said as the meeting started, "I see you've submitted an appeal regarding your fines." "That's right. And I've also submitted 17 reports of covenant violations throughout the community that appear to be unenforced." A murmur went through the small crowd of homeowners. Donna's face tightened. "We'll review your appeal in executive session and notify you of our decision. I'd like to address the board now, during the public portion of the meeting." She clearly didn't want to allow it, but with other homeowners watching, she nodded curtly. I stood. "I'm appealing these fines on the grounds that they are retaliatory and excessive." I took action to address a serious safety concern that the HOA had ignored despite multiple requests for reasonable accommodation. Instead of working with me in good faith, the board is now punishing me with thousands of dollars in fines. "You blocked HOA property and violated community rules," Donna said. "The fines are appropriate. Are they? Because I've documented numerous other violations throughout the community that haven't resulted in any fines at all. The Roberts house at 4891 Maple has had Christmas decorations up for 6 weeks past the covenant deadline. The Johnsons at 5002 Birch have a boat in their driveway, clearly prohibited. The Martins at 4756 Wintergreen painted their trim a non-approved color 3 months ago. The room got very quiet. I could see some of the other homeowners shifting uncomfortably. We address violations as they're reported, Gerald said. I'm reporting them now. 17 violations, fully documented with photos and dates. I expect fines to be issued consistently, or I'll be filing a complaint with the Minnesota Attorney General's office about selective enforcement and harassment. Donna's face had gone from red to nearly purple. Mr. Thompson, we don't respond well to threats. And I don't respond well to being discriminated against and retaliated against for advocating for my rights as a disabled resident. The meeting continued, but the dynamic had shifted. Other homeowners started asking questions about how fines were determined and why some violations seemed to be ignored. Donna tried to maintain control, but I could see her authority eroding in real time. After the meeting, several residents approached me. I didn't know they could just fine us like that without warning, one woman said. They can if it's in the covenants you signed, I told her, but they're supposed to apply the rules fairly to everyone. An older man shook my hand. I've been dealing with them for 3 years about a drainage problem they won't fix. Maybe your approach is the right one. Don't let them push you around. The board met in executive session for over an hour while we waited. When they finally emerged, Donna announced that they were reducing my fines to $1,000 total as a one-time courtesy, but that the violation stood on my record. It was something, but I wasn't satisfied. That night, I started drafting a formal complaint to the Minnesota Department of Human Rights about the HOA's failure to provide reasonable accommodation. I also reached out to a disability rights attorney I found through an online search. Her name was Jennifer Walsh, and she practiced in Minneapolis. When I explained my situation over the phone, she sounded interested. HOA cases can be tricky, she said. But if you've documented everything and they really did refuse a reasonable accommodation request, you might have a strong Fair Housing Act claim. Those come with serious penalties, including potential damages and attorney fees. I'm not trying to get rich off this, I said. I just want them to treat people fairly. I understand. Let me review what you've got, and we'll set up a consultation. No promises, but this sounds like it has merit. I sent her everything. My phone logs, emails, the timeline of events, photos of the ice, my medical documentation proving my disability, and the HOA's responses. 3 days later, she called back. Kevin, I'll take your case. I'm seeing clear violations of fair housing law here, plus potential ADA issues and what looks like retaliation. I'm going to send a demand letter to the HOA's attorney first, see if we can settle this without litigation. What do you think will happen? One of 2 things. Either they'll realize they're in serious trouble and settle quickly, or they'll dig in and we'll go to court. Given what you've told me about this Donna Sterling, I'm guessing it'll be the latter. The demand letter went out a week later. It outlined my complaints, cited the relevant laws, and demanded that the HOA remove all fines, issue a formal apology, implement fair housing training for the board, and pay nominal damages for the harm caused. The response from the HOA's attorney came back fast and aggressive. They denied any wrongdoing, claimed they'd gone above and beyond by eventually helping with the ice removal, and stated that my use of the dump truck was a criminal act that justified the fines. "They want a fight," Jennifer told me. "We'll give them one." I'm filing a formal complaint with the Department of Human Rights and preparing a lawsuit in federal court. Over the next month, things escalated quickly. The HOA hit back by conducting an inspection of my property and issuing violations for minor issues. My mailbox post needed paint. My lawn had bare patches from the harsh winter. My trash cans were visible from the street on a non-collection day. I documented every new violation and passed it all to Jennifer. "This is perfect evidence of retaliation," she said. "Keep records of everything." The legal process moved slower than I wanted, but things were happening. The Department of Human Rights accepted my complaint and opened an investigation. Jennifer filed the federal lawsuit, and the HOA had to respond. During this time, something unexpected happened. Other residents started coming forward with their own complaints about the HOA. A couple who'd been fined for having the wrong color curtains visible from the street. A family threatened with foreclosure over unpaid fines for their kid's basketball hoop. An elderly veteran who'd been denied permission to fly an American flag that was slightly larger than the covenant allowed. The local newspaper got wind of the story, and a reporter named Sarah Kim called me for an interview. "Mr. Thompson, I'm hearing you're in a legal battle with your HOA over disability access. Would you be willing to talk about it?" I checked with Jennifer first, who gave me the okay as long as I stuck to facts. The article ran a week later on the front page of the Thornfield Tribune. Local HOA faces federal lawsuit over disability discrimination. The story detailed my situation and included quotes from other residents about what they called Donna Sterling's tyrannical leadership. The reporter had done her homework, finding that Meadowbrook Estates had one of the highest fine revenues of any HOA in the county, and that complaint filings with the state had increased steadily during Donna's tenure as president. The reaction was immediate. The story got picked up by Minneapolis news stations, and suddenly I had cameras on my lawn. I gave a brief statement about just wanting fair treatment and reasonable accommodation, and that was enough. The video went viral on social media. "Disabled Veteran Battles HOA Tyrant" was the angle everyone ran with, even though I'd been in the Army for only 4 years, and that wasn't really the main issue. But the attention was working. The HOA's attorney reached out to Jennifer about settlement discussions. We met at Jennifer's office in downtown Minneapolis on a cold March morning. The HOA sent their attorney, a stern-looking woman named Carol Hughes, along with Gerald from the board. Notably, Donna Sterling did not attend. "My clients are willing to discuss resolution," Carol began. "But Mr. Thompson needs to understand that his actions were out of line." "My client exercised his rights after being denied legally required accommodation," Jennifer countered. "Your client is facing serious federal civil rights violations." We went back and forth for an hour. The HOA offered to drop the fines if I dropped the lawsuit. Jennifer said no, we wanted damages, policy changes, and board training. They balked at everything. Finally, Gerald spoke up. "Can I be frank here? The board is divided on this." Donna pushed for the hardline approach, but some of us think we should have helped Kevin from the start. The negative publicity is hurting property values, and owners are angry about the legal fees we're spending on this. "Then settle," Jennifer said simply. "Admit you made a mistake, compensate Kevin reasonably, and commit to doing better." Carol and Gerald stepped out to make calls. When they returned, Carol looked frustrated. "Mrs. Sterling refuses to authorize any settlement that includes an admission of wrongdoing or significant payment. She's insisting we fight this." Then we'll see you in court, Jennifer said. As we left, Gerald caught up with me in the hallway. Kevin, for what it's worth, I'm sorry about all this. I voted to help you from the beginning, and I've been pushing for settlement. But Donna has the other 3 board members in her pocket, and they won't go against her. Why does she have so much power? I asked. He sighed. She's been president for 6 years. She controls the proxy votes from owners who don't attend meetings. She's tight with the property management company we contract with, and honestly, I think she just likes the control. This HOA is her fiefdom. Someone should run against her. People have tried. She crushes them. Sends out mass emails about how they'll mismanage the budget or let property values fall. It works. I thought about that conversation a lot over the next few days. An idea started forming. The annual HOA board election was coming up in 2 months. 3 seats were up for grabs, including Donna's presidency. Normally, these elections were formalities. Most homeowners didn't vote, and Donna's slate of candidates always won with the proxies she collected. But things weren't normal anymore. The community was paying attention now. I started making calls and knocking on doors. I talked to the couple who'd been fined over curtains, the family with the basketball hoop, the veteran with the flag. I talked to everyone who'd been wronged by the HOA's aggressive enforcement. We need to change the board, I told them. Run for seats. Get your friends to run and actually vote. Within a week, I had a slate of 5 candidates willing to run for the 3 open seats, all people who wanted to reform how the HOA operated. I also convinced Marcus, the board member who'd supported me, to run for president against Donna. The campaign was unlike anything Meadowbrook Estates had ever seen. We created a simple website outlining our platform: fair and consistent enforcement, better communication with residents, and prioritizing safety over nitpicking violations. We went door to door, talking to neighbors. Donna fought back hard. She sent out official-looking letters on HOA letterhead warning that the opposition slate would raise fees and let the neighborhood fall into disrepair. She held a special town hall where she presented charts and graphs about the HOA's financial health under her leadership. But she couldn't overcome the momentum. Too many people had been hurt by her policies, and the lawsuit had made them all aware of it. Election day was in mid-April. We set up the community center to receive ballots, and the turnout was unprecedented. Usually, maybe 15% of homeowners voted in person, with Donna controlling most of the proxies. This time, over 60% came out. When the votes were counted that evening, Marcus won the presidency with 58% of the vote. All 3 board seats went to reform candidates. Donna Sterling was out. I wasn't there for the count. I was at home, resting my hip which had been bothering me from all the door knocking. But Marcus called me with the news, and I could hear the celebration in the background. "We did it, Kevin. Clean sweep." "You did it," I said. "I just got the ball rolling. The first thing we're doing is settling your lawsuit on fair terms. No more fighting." The new board was seated in May, and within 2 weeks, Jennifer had a settlement offer that was actually reasonable. The HOA would pay $50,000 in damages, remove all fines from my record, issue a public apology, implement fair housing training, and create a new process for handling reasonable accommodation requests. I accepted, but the story still wasn't over. In June, the Minnesota Department of Human Rights completed their investigation. Their finding was damning. The Meadowbrook Estates HOA, under Donna Sterling's leadership, had engaged in a pattern of disability discrimination and fair housing violations, not just against me but in several other cases they'd uncovered during their investigation. The state imposed fines, and required the HOA to enter a consent decree, agreeing to monitoring and oversight for 3 years. More significantly, they referred potential criminal charges to the Ramsey County Attorney's Office for review. The criminal investigation focused on whether Donna had engaged in fraud and theft. Investigators discovered that she'd been approving questionable expenses to vendors who were owned by her relatives, essentially funneling HOA money to herself indirectly. They also found that she'd collected proxy votes under false pretenses in previous elections, telling homeowners they were signing maintenance approvals when they were actually signing over their voting rights. In August, Donna Sterling was charged with theft by swindle and election fraud. The amounts weren't huge, maybe $20,000 over several years, but it was enough for felony charges. I watched the news coverage of her arrest from my living room, my feet up on the coffee table. She was led out of her house in handcuffs, looking smaller and older than I remembered. I should have felt triumphant, but mostly I just felt tired. The legal process for Donna's criminal case took months. I didn't follow it closely, but the newspaper coverage kept me updated. She eventually pleaded guilty to reduced charges in November and was sentenced to 2 years of probation, restitution to the HOA, and community service. No jail time, but her reputation was destroyed. The HOA under Marcus's leadership was a completely different organization. They focused on actual community improvement rather than petty enforcement. They negotiated better contracts with service providers, saving money that they used to add real amenities like updated playground equipment and better lighting on the walking paths. When winter came around again, I watched the snow removal crews work with new efficiency. And when a homeowner on Oak Street had a similar ice problem from a broken sprinkler line, the HOA helped them within 24 hours of being asked. I settled into actual retirement finally, spending time with my daughter who visited more often, going to physical therapy consistently now that I could safely get in and out of my house, and even joining the community center's senior activities group. One spring afternoon, almost a year after the dump truck incident, I was working in my garden when a car pulled up. A young couple got out, looking at the house next door which had just gone up for sale. "Excuse me," the woman called over. "Do you live here? Can we ask you about the neighborhood?" "Sure," I said, walking over to the fence. "What's the HOA like?" the man asked. "We've heard horror stories about some of them." I smiled. "Well, we had some problems a while back, but the community came together, made changes, and now it is actually pretty great. New board is focused on the right things. So you'd recommend it?" I thought about everything that had happened. The ice, the dump truck, the fight, the election, all of it. "Yeah," I said, "I would. Just stay involved, go to meetings, and don't let anyone push you around if something isn't right. The HOA works for you, not the other way around." They thanked me and went to look at the house. I went back to my garden, thinking about how much had changed. The settlement money sat in my bank account, most of it untouched. I donated $10,000 to a disability rights organization and set aside some for Rachel's kids' college funds. The rest was just there, a reminder of the fight but not the reason I'd fought. The real victory was watching Marcus and the new board actually serve the community. It was seeing neighbors who'd been scared of the HOA now attending meetings and speaking up. It was the policy changes that protected people like me who might need accommodation. That summer, the new board threw a community barbecue, something Donna's administration had never done. Hundreds of residents showed up, and for the first time, Meadowbrook Estates actually felt like a community rather than just a collection of houses governed by arbitrary rules. I brought potato salad and spent the afternoon talking with neighbors I'd never really met before. Mrs. Chen from next door introduced me to her grandchildren who were visiting. The veteran with the flag issue, whose name was Robert, turned out to be a huge Vikings fan like me, and we made plans to watch games together in the fall. As the sun set and families packed up their picnic supplies, Marcus pulled me aside. "You know, we should put up a plaque or something. About what happened, what you did." I shook my head. "No plaques, I just wanted to get out of my driveway safely. Everything else that happened was just people standing up for themselves." "You showed them they could," he insisted. "Maybe, but they did the actual standing. Give them the credit." We left it at that, but a month later, I noticed something new at the community center. A framed document on the wall near the meeting room. It was the new HOA mission statement, drafted by the Reform Board with input from residents. The Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association exists to serve our community through fair, transparent, and compassionate governance. We commit to treating all residents with dignity and respect, addressing safety concerns promptly, and enforcing our covenants consistently and reasonably. We recognize that our community is made up of diverse individuals with different needs, and we pledge to accommodate those needs whenever possible within the law. Below it was a list of principles, including reasonable accommodation for disabilities is a right, not a favor, and enforcement should improve community life, not create hardship. It wasn't a plaque about me, but it was better. It was a promise to every current and future resident that what had happened to me wouldn't happen again. I stood there reading it, and Patricia from the office walked by. She was still there, still answering phones, but working for a very different board now. "Good changes," she said, nodding at the document. "Yeah. For what it is worth, Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry about how your calls were handled back then. I was just following the board's direction, but I should have pushed back more." "You were doing your job," I said. "The problem was the people giving you direction." She smiled, relieved, and continued on her way. As fall approached and the weather started to cool, I found myself watching the weather forecasts more carefully, old habits from the previous winter. But this time, there was no anxiety about getting trapped by ice or snow. The first significant snowfall came in late October, earlier than usual. I woke up to 4 inches of white covering everything. By noon, the HOA's contractors had cleared all the streets and common areas. When I went out to shovel my own driveway, I found that someone had already cleared the approach where the street met my property, making it easier for me to finish the job at my own pace. Small things, but they mattered. In November, I got a call from Jennifer Walsh, my attorney. "Kevin, I wanted to let you know I'm using your case as a teaching example in a fair housing seminar I'm giving. Obviously with your permission. Of course, if it helps other people, go for it. It already has. I've had 3 new clients come to me with similar HOA issues, and they all mentioned seeing your story. We're making a difference." After we hung up, I thought about that. Making a difference. I'd never set out to be any kind of advocate or activist. I just wanted to get my driveway cleared. But sometimes standing up for yourself ends up helping others too. The anniversary of the dump truck incident passed quietly in mid-December. I didn't mark it in any special way, but I did drive past the snow storage area. The entrance was clear, trucks coming and going freely. Mountains of snow sat in neat piles, exactly as they should. I remembered the satisfaction I'd felt parking that Big Mac truck right across the gate, the engine rumbling as I positioned it just right. It had been a crazy move, probably not the smartest thing I'd ever done, but it had worked. It had forced a conversation that needed to happen. Would I do it again? Probably not. I was older now, more aware of the risks I'd taken, but I didn't regret it either. Christmas brought Rachel and her family up from Chicago. My grandkids, 8 and 10, loved playing in the snow at the community center's sledding hill. Watching them, I felt grateful for the community we'd built here. "Dad, you seem happy," Rachel said as we watched the kids from the warming shelter. "I am. Took a while to get here, but yeah." "Think you will stay in Meadowbrook Estates?" "Definitely. This is home now. And besides, I've got equity in this place beyond just money. Blood, sweat, and tears, as they say," she laughed. "More like ice, dump trucks, and lawsuits." "That too." As the year wound down, I reflected on everything that had changed. A new HOA board that actually served the community. Policies that protected residents instead of punishing them. A neighborhood that felt connected rather than divided. And Donna Sterling. I'd heard through the grapevine that she'd moved out of Meadowbrook Estates entirely, selling her house and relocating to a different suburb. Some people said she'd moved to a neighborhood without an HOA. I hoped she'd learned something from the experience, but I honestly didn't think about her much anymore. The story could have ended there with everything neatly resolved. But life is messier than that, and there was one more piece that needed addressing. In January, I received a letter from the Ramsey County Attorney's Office. They were finalizing the restitution order for Donna's criminal case and wanted to know if I wished to make a victim impact statement at her sentencing review hearing. I almost declined. What more was there to say? But Jennifer encouraged me to do it. "It's not about revenge," she said. "It's about closure and making sure the court understands the real impact of what happened." So in February, on a cold morning much like the one when this all started, I went to the courthouse in downtown St. Paul. The hearing was brief and bureaucratic, nothing like TV courtroom dramas. Donna sat with her attorney, looking diminished in a plain gray suit. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it short. "Your Honor, what happened to me wasn't just about ice on my driveway. It was about someone in a position of power choosing to ignore a legitimate safety need, because helping would have been inconvenient or might have set a precedent. It was about retaliation when I stood up for myself. And as the investigation showed, it was part of a larger pattern of abuse of authority. I'm not here asking for harsh punishment. Miss Sterling has already lost her position, her reputation, and paid significant fines. But I want the court to understand that HOA board members have real power over people's lives and homes. When that power is abused, people get hurt. I was lucky. I had the resources and the stubbornness to fight back. A lot of people don't. I hope Miss Sterling has learned from this. I hope other HOA leaders learn from it too. Power should be used to serve people, not control them." The judge thanked me and proceeded with the hearing. Donna's probation terms remained unchanged, but I'd said what I needed to say. As I left the courthouse, Donna's attorney caught up with me in the hallway. "Mr. Thompson, Miss Sterling asked me to give you this." It was a handwritten note on plain paper. I almost threw it away unread, but curiosity won out. "Mr. Thompson, I know an apology is inadequate for what I put you through. I let my need for control override common sense and decency. You were right to fight back, and I was wrong to make it necessary. I hope the changes at Meadowbrook Estates last and that no one else goes through what you did. Donna Sterling." It wasn't much, but it was something. I folded the note and put it in my pocket, then walked out into the winter afternoon. Spring came early that year, the snow melting by mid-March. As the ice disappeared from the streets and lawns, I found myself thinking about cycles and seasons, how things that seem permanent can change faster than you expect. The Meadowbrook Estates annual meeting in April was well attended again, the momentum from the previous year's election carrying forward. Marcus announced that the HOA had finished the year under budget, and would be reducing fees by 5% for the coming year while still maintaining all services. The applause was genuine and enthusiastic. Several residents stood to thank the board for specific things: quick response to a drainage issue, fair handling of a fence dispute, approval of a deck addition that the old board would never have allowed. The mood was positive, almost celebratory. When Marcus opened the floor for new business, a woman I didn't recognize stood up. "I'm new to the community, just moved in last month. I've been to HOA meetings in other places and they were always tense and hostile. This is amazing. What changed?" Before Marcus could answer, several people pointed at me. I felt my face get hot as attention turned my way. "I didn't change anything," I said, standing reluctantly. "The community did. I just had a problem that needed solving, and when the old board wouldn't help, I made enough noise that people paid attention. But the real work was done by everyone who voted, who ran for the board, who stayed involved. That's what changed things." More applause, and I sat down quickly, not wanting to make it about me. But after the meeting, people kept coming up to thank me, to tell me their own stories of how things were better now. It was overwhelming and humbling. Finally, I escaped outside where the spring evening was mild and pleasant. Mrs. Chen was there, sitting on a bench. "Big hero," she said with a smile. "Just a guy who wouldn't take no for an answer." "Sometimes that's what heroes are," she said. "People who won't accept the unacceptable." I sat next to her and we watched the sun set over the neighborhood. Families were out walking, kids riding bikes, people working in their yards. It looked like the suburban dream the developers had probably promised when they first built Meadowbrook Estates. "You know what the best part is?" I said. "I can walk to my mailbox without worrying about falling on ice." "That's all I really wanted." "You got that and changed a whole community," Mrs. Chen said. "Not bad for a year's work." As summer arrived, life settled into comfortable routines. I played cards weekly with Robert and some other veterans. I attended most HOA meetings, though not all. I worked in my garden and visited with Rachel's family and watched my grandkids grow. The dump truck incident became neighborhood legend, the story getting more exaggerated with each telling. In some versions, I'd blocked the entire neighborhood with a convoy of trucks. In others, I'd personally removed Donna from office in a dramatic confrontation. I let people tell their versions without correction. The truth was documented in legal files and news archives for anyone who really wanted to know. What mattered was what the story represented, the idea that regular people could stand up to unfair authority and win. Whether the details were accurate was less important than the inspiration it provided. In August, the community center dedicated a new wheelchair ramp and accessible entrance. It wasn't related to my situation directly, but Marcus made a point of telling me that my case had made the board more aware of accessibility issues throughout the community. "We did an audit of all our common areas," he said. "Found a lot of places that weren't up to HOA standards. We're fixing them one by one." That felt like a legacy worth having. As fall approached again and the weather cooled, I prepared for another Minnesota winter. I had salt and a good snow shovel. I'd confirmed my snow removal service for the driveway. I'd had my truck serviced and made sure my walk was in good repair. But mostly, I wasn't worried. I knew that if something went wrong, if ice built up or there was a problem I couldn't handle alone, I could call the HOA and get help. That security, that trust, was worth more than any settlement check. The first snow of the season came in late October, just a dusting that melted by noon. As I watched it fall from my living room window, I thought about where I'd been a year ago and where I was now. I'd gone from being trapped in my house, frustrated and angry, to being an active part of a functional community. I'd gone from fighting the HOA to working with it. I'd gone from isolation to connection. And all because I'd refused to accept that the way things were was the way they had to be. Later that day, I drove to Tommy's equipment yard. I hadn't seen him since returning the dump truck, and I owed him thanks and probably lunch at minimum. "Kevin," he greeted me with a bear hug. "I saw you on the news. You really did something crazy with that truck." "I did. Thanks for trusting me with it." "Anytime, man. Though maybe next time warn me if you are planning civil disobedience." We grabbed lunch at a diner near his yard, and I filled him in on everything that had happened since. "So it all worked out," he said, finishing his burger. "Yeah, eventually. Took a lot of fighting, but yeah. You ever need equipment again, you let me know, though hopefully for less dramatic reasons." I laughed. "I'll stick to renting a tiller for the garden from now on." Driving home, I took the long way through Meadowbrook Estates, looking at the neighborhood with fresh eyes. Nice houses, well-maintained streets, good bones. With the right leadership and community engagement, it could be a genuinely great place to live, and increasingly it was. The holidays came and went. Another new year arrived, bringing with it the perspective that only time and distance can provide. The anger and frustration I'd felt during the worst of the conflict had faded, replaced by satisfaction with how things had turned out and pride in what the community had become. In February, on the anniversary of the ice incident, I did something I'd been thinking about for a while. I wrote an article for the HOA newsletter about the importance of community involvement. A year ago, I had a problem that seemed impossible to solve, I wrote. The system was stacked against me, and the people in power weren't interested in helping. I could have given up, moved away, or just suffered through it. Instead, I made noise. I fought back. And I learned that change is possible when people care enough to make it happen. But the real lesson isn't about fighting. It's about engagement. If more of us had been paying attention to how our HOA was run, the problems never would have gotten so bad in the first place. The best way to prevent abuse of power is to stay involved, ask questions, vote in elections, and hold leaders accountable. Our community is thriving now because people are doing exactly that. Let's keep it going. Marcus called me after it was published. That was perfect, exactly the right message. Hopefully people listen. They are. We've got more engagement now than ever before. People actually want to serve on committees. The Architectural Review Board has more applicants than positions. This is what an HOA should be. As winter gradually released its grip and spring approached once more, I found myself content in a way I hadn't been since before my wife passed away 5 years earlier. I had purpose, community, and the satisfaction of having made a real difference. The ice that had covered my driveway was long gone, melted and evaporated into nothing. But what it had set in motion remained, solid and real and growing stronger every day. On a warm April afternoon, I was planting flowers in my front garden when a moving truck pulled up across the street. A family was moving in, young parents with 2 small kids. I watched them start unloading, then grabbed a cooler of water bottles and walked over. "Welcome to the neighborhood," I said, offering cold drinks. The father accepted gratefully. "Thanks. I'm Michael, this is my wife Sarah, and those tornadoes are Emma and Josh." Kevin Thompson. "I live right there. If you need anything or have questions about the neighborhood, let me know." "Actually," Sarah said, "we heard some things about the HOA here, something about a big conflict last year. We almost didn't buy because we were worried about HOA drama." I smiled. "There was drama, yeah, but it got resolved. The HOA here now is actually really good. Fair, responsive, focused on the right things. You'll be fine." "That's a relief," Michael said. "Our last neighborhood had an HOA president who was a nightmare. Well, if you ever have problems here, don't be afraid to speak up and come to meetings. That's the key. We talked for a few more minutes before they got back to unloading. As I walked back to my house, I felt good about the welcome I'd been able to give them. They'd start their time in Meadowbrook Estates with a very different experience than I'd had. That evening, sitting on my porch watching the sunset, I reflected on the journey from that first morning staring at the ice to now. It had been hard, frustrating, expensive, and exhausting. But I'd do it again if I had to, because sometimes the hardest fights are the most important ones. Sometimes refusing to back down changes more than just your own situation. Sometimes one person making noise is enough to wake up a whole community. The dump truck blocking the snow storage had been a symbol, a dramatic gesture that forced attention and action. But the real work had been everything that came after. The meetings, the organizing, the legal battle, the election, the slow work of rebuilding trust and creating better systems. That work continued still, and always would. Good governance requires constant vigilance and participation. The moment people stop paying attention is the moment problems start creeping back in. But for now, in this moment, things were good. The HOA served the community. The community engaged with the HOA. People looked out for each other, and I could walk to my mailbox without fear of falling on ice. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes that is everything.